Well, we've got some news for you. As you know, Christian apologist Samuel Green, I got to catch up with him on Facebook, and he made some startling statements, and we will expose his hypocrisy and his double standards. We've actually made a longer version to this video. This is a summary version to make the video shorter, and we will show how Samuel Green exposes his own fallacy. As you know, Christian apologist Samuel Green, he wrote an article on the Answering Islam website declaring that the Quran that we have is a variant reading. There are variances upon variances, and he attacks the preservation of the Quran. Now, what we're going to show is that he's just recently made a statement on Facebook, and his statement is not actually accurate with what he presents himself to be on his own websites. So let's see what he says. And as you know, Jay Smith, who is a Christian apologist at Hyde Park in England, he claimed that there are 26 different versions of the Quran. Now, Samuel Green has come out and said there is only one standard version of the Quran we can read today. Why? Because Uthman burnt all the other versions. And he says this in his defense of Christianity, because as you know, the Christian Bible has got many versions of the Bible, and Samuel basically says that this is good because there are many testimonies and different attestations where they can compare the Bibles and the manuscripts and so forth. So he says that in Islam it's more catastrophic that it doesn't have this, right? So let's go to his quote and what he says. So have a listen. This is Samuel Green in the screen. This is Facebook, okay? All the evidence is here. Samuel Green, he quotes, let me read exactly what he says. Quote, all of these claims come from reconstruction of how the apostolic traditions came to form the synoptic gospels. This is actually a very good problem to have because it means we have multiple testimonies that we can compare. That is, we can compare Matthew, Mark, and Luke and propose a history. Imagine if we only had Matthew. With only Matthew, we would not have any of this discussion. We could make no claims about what Matthew may or may not have done, or any emphasis he may have, because we would have nothing to compare him to. But the church did not do this. They preserved 4 authentic gospels. Therefore, we do not use the word problem in a negative sense, but in a good educational sense, like when we ask students to solve mathematical problems. Christians need to realize how great this is, and may realize it's more when they compare it to the Quran. Now have a listen to this, what he says in his second paragraph. I'm quoting verbatim of what Samuel is saying. He quotes, Muhammad did not make a collection of the Quran. His companions made their own collection. And there were many collections. They gathered together different sources, like the Gospels have sources, and discussed what was authentic. These collections had different numbers of surahs, different surah orders, and very different emphasis for the same verse. That is, there were synoptic Qurans. Islam took a different direction to Christianity and destroyed all collections except one. Did you hear that? Listen carefully what Samuel Green says. He quotes, Islam took a different direction to Christianity and destroyed all collections except for one. This is catastrophic for the study of the Quran, he writes. If we had these other collections, we would be able to do synoptic comparisons for the Quran like we do with the Gospels. But now we only have one testimony to the Quran. This is a massive problem, and a problem in the bad sense of the word problem. It means we have lost valuable evidence to understand the history and theology of the Quran. Muslims cannot make absolutely claims about the Quran based on one testimony. It would be like the church making claims based solely on Matthew. The destruction of all these evidences of the synoptic Quran creates a massive historical and theological problem for the Quran. Back to the Gospels and the original posts, when scholars make these claims about the Gospel, ask for evidence. You will find that most of the time they are based on speculative historical reconstructions that change every 30 years. But it is great that these scholars can even have this discussion. A far worse position to be in is that of Islam, which has destroyed its synoptic evidence. Christians are far richer, both historically and theologically, for having preserved 4 Gospels. Muslims are poorer for having destroyed their synoptic Qur'ans, and with them their historical and theological insights. So where is the contradiction here? Well, the contradiction is evident. Samuel Green, time and time in his whole statement, has said that the Bible is better attested because there are more versions today that we can read and compare and analyze. He goes on to say that Uthman burnt all the versions, so today, since all the versions are destroyed, we only have one standard, one version of the Quran we can all read from. So notice he says this on his Facebook post, but then Samuel Green refers us to his own website and at Answering Islam, where he talks about there are different versions of the Quran. Not only does he talk about that there are different versions of the Quran, he even gives us examples of what these different versions look like. So that's a contradiction. He's saying that Uthman burnt and destroyed all the versions and gave us only one version for us to read today. But then he refers us to his own website, showing us that those versions exist today, and he can actually show us those examples where he opens one version of that Quran, like the Warsh and the Hafs, and then he compares it to the Hafs Quran, and then he compares the Hafs to the Warsh Quran, and he shows us all these differences between the two Qurans, right? And by the way, it's been refuted on my website. I'll put a blog here that they're not really different Qurans. It's just his imagination. But the point here is that he's claiming that on his website, he can show us visual evidences of those Qur'ans existing today that are different. So he's actually contradicting himself. He says there are only one Quran, there is only one version today because Uthman burnt all the other versions, and it's catastrophic for Islam because Islam can't compare the different versions of the Quran because Uthman burnt them all. But then he's now referring us to his website and he shows us examples where there's different Qur'ans. So, I mean, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, honestly. I don't know. So this guy's been refuted. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ridiculous and absurd. He's making these claims. In fact, his own friend, Jay Smith, makes a claim that there's, forget Warsh Quran and Hafs Quran and these different Qurans. Jay Smith goes to the extent to say that there are 26 different Qurans. And at Hyde Park, with his evangelical friend, female friend, they start quoting from these 26 different Qurans, claiming that they're all different Qurans. But then that would conclude that it disagrees with Samuel Green, because Samuel Green is saying that there is only one Quran today and Uthman burnt everything. But then Samuel Green contradicts this and then refers us to his own website claiming that there are different Qur'ans. So on one hand, on his Facebook account, Samuel Green is disagreeing with Jay Smith that there are 26 different Qur'ans because Uthman burnt everything and there's only one standard. But then he agrees with Jay Smith by referring to his own website showing that there are different Qur'ans. So which is it, Samuel Green? You're a confused puppy. I mean, seriously, I don't know what to say. I mean, you're absolutely ridiculous and, you know, you're just contradicting yourself. Absolutely contradicting yourself. So to sum up, Samuel says there is only one Quran left to us by Uthman after he burnt all other variances, which would mean all the variances are destroyed. So we shouldn't be able to read any variants today because Uthman destroyed every single one of them. But then he contradicts this assertion by referring us to his website showing all these supposedly different Qur'ans we can actually read, compare with other different readings of the Quran. So the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a hypocrite. He's obviously lying that there are different Qur'ans. And then he makes one statement on his Facebook account and then he contradicts it through his own website. Thank you for listening. And like I said, we've given him rebuttals. You can refer to my website, Mustafa Shaheen at 33. And we've refuted Samuel Green on all these claims of, you know, there being a different Quran in his website. Okay, you can refer to my blog below this link. So yes, you are a hypocrite, Samuel Green. You don't know what you're talking about. You say one thing on Facebook and another thing on your website.